Hi, y'all. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Gyan Dive. I am talking to y'all from India. Well, my throat. Um, but yeah, it's been a hot minute. We haven't talked in a while. But I had some time and I decided to record this episode. Um, I want to begin today's episode a little differently. Sometimes I form an episode from a big realization, sometimes it comes from months of reflection, and sometimes it comes from a very quiet moment when you notice something shift inside of you. A moment when you realize, oh, this still hurts me, or this still touches me in a bigger way. Not in a dramatic way, not in a blaming way, but just in a very honest human way. So recently I had one of those moments. Where something small on the outside stirred something deeper on the inside. I've dealt with quite a bit of childhood trauma, and I feel like sometimes it just slips my mind that those things exist until something small happens that looks seemingly small or seems seemingly small to other people. But it kind of really triggers me. So one of those moments happened. And what struck me wasn't the moment itself, but how familiar the feeling was. So instead of taking it personally, instead of spiraling and thinking of 100 possible ways, that I'm just not it, I decided to ask myself, what do I want to do with this feeling? And then the answer wasn't confrontation, it wasn't explanation, it was creativity. So I decided to sit down, open my laptop, and turn that energy into reflection inward and turn it into a learning lesson for all of us. So I just wanted to go into the Gita and see how it could help me through the situation. And I hope that it does the same for you. So that's what today's episode is, a choice to channel emotion into awareness and awareness into peace. So today we're talking about choosing peace when old patterns resurface through the lens of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's not exactly the topics that I put out, but it's kind of a combination of them. Um, so there are moments in life that seem ordinary at first, like it's nothing too big. It's like I said, seemingly is like a small thing. Like not to you obviously, but to other people it seems like it's just a small thing. And yet later you notice yourself replaying it. Your chest feels a little tighter, your thoughts feel heavier than expected, you feel more affected than you should be. So that's usually the moment you realize this wasn't just about what happened. There's obviously something deeper to that. So this is something that so many of us experience, I'm sure. Comment down if you've experienced something like this before. I certainly have. I mean, I recently did. So a small moment triggering a much bigger emotional response. And often that response isn't coming from the present, it's coming from something older, something deeper. The Bhagavad Gita explains this beautifully in Bhagavad Gita 2.14. Pain and pleasure come and go like the seasons. How profound and simple, but how hard is that to actually digest and implement, right? But it's basically saying that some seasons don't arrive loudly, they arrive quietly through emotion. Sometimes the present moment is just touching an old tender place inside of us. Choosing peace begins with recognizing that not every feeling is asking for action. Sometimes feelings are simply asking to be understood. Sometimes you just have to sit with those feelings and you don't necessarily have to do something about them, you know? They're just there and you have to observe them. And once you observe an emotion, it's easy to let it go. So let's say you're angry or you're sad or you're upset in general. If you just sit with that emotion will likely just last a minute max, right? So let's say you just sit with that emotion and just acknowledge it. Like, yeah, I acknowledge the fact that you're feeling mad. I see you. I see you anger. I see you sadness. That feeling will pass. But if your mind continues to create stories and you overthink it, then that feeling is prolonged. So, one of the most important things that I've learned is that our nervous system doesn't always live in the present. Sometimes something small, something minuscule can happen. A tone, a pause, a moment of distance, and suddenly your body goes, right? Um, well, it's obvious that the reaction isn't proportionate to what happened, but it's like something from the past. So it's remembering something from years ago. So that's not weakness, that's a memory. We don't just store experiences in our thoughts, we store them in our nervous system, in our bodies, even, right? In our emotional patterns, in our reflexes. So when a feeling seems bigger than in the moment, it's often because the present has been gently brushed against something old. So something old has been pricked at. The Bhagavad Gita explains this process with incredible clarity in Bhagavad Gita 2.62 to 2.63. So it says, when the mind dwells on something, attachment forms. From attachment arises desire. From desire, emotional agitation. From agitation, confusion. From confusion, loss of discernment. What Krishna is showing us here is that reactions don't come out of nowhere. They come from conditioned memory, from patterns that were formed long before this moment. Like we've all experienced some form of, I don't know, like some trauma or anything in our life, right? And then you wonder why that moment seems so big to us. Well, it's because those experiences are stored in your memory. Um, so the Gita tells us to never suppress this. It doesn't say you shouldn't feel this, right? Instead, it teaches us awareness. Because the moment you notice, oh, this reaction is older than today, you reclaim choice. So peace begins when we stop asking, why am I like this? Why do I think like this? And start asking, what part of me is remembering something right now? There can be a part of you, there can be your inner child that is feeling hurt, that is feeling unchosen, unloved, and that part is activated. So for you right now, you might feel like, oh, like, why do I feel this way? But to your inner child, it makes a lot of sense, right? So that shift from judgment to curiosity is where healing begins, right? So one of the most powerful inner choices that we can make is deciding not to take everything personally. So that doesn't mean pretending that something like that didn't hurt, right? It means choosing not to build an identity around the hurt, not to form ideas around the hurt about yourself and about other people, right? So, in moments like this, the mind is very quick to create meaning. What does this say about me? Did I do something wrong? Am I less important than I thought? Am I not enough? Right? Your mind just goes in all these different directions and creates meaning out of a simple event, right? Um, I could have gone there. I could have internalized a story that wasn't necessarily me, but instead I remembered a teaching from the Gita. So in Bhagavad Gita 6.26, Krishna says, whenever the restless mind wanders, gently bring it back. Not forcefully, not angrily, gently. And that gentleness is where peace begins, right? Loving yourself, treating yourself with tenderness, care, and gentleness is where your peace will begin. So it's so important to love yourself before any of this. So in situations like this, you are able to remain tender and calm with yourself. So I reminded myself that this moment doesn't define me and that this feeling doesn't need a full narrative. And I don't need to make this about my self-worth. I don't need to tie this to my self-worth because even though my inner child is thinking, oh, like I feel unchosen and unlovable in this moment, I know that that's not the case. And here I am, showing myself some love by having some alone time and just processing what happened instead of overthinking and thinking of 100 possible things about myself. I choose to deal with myself with love and care. And yeah, you might not feel the best telling other people this because to them it might seem like, oh, this is a small thing, or they might not understand the sensitivity of the issue. But only you know how much something like this has affected you in the past. Therefore, you're the only one who can truly understand yourself. So, one thing the Gita teaches us again and again is that growth isn't linear, right? I know this is one of the topics that I put out, but I'm not going to go into this fully today, but I'm just going to touch on it. So, old patterns don't resurface because we're failing, they resurface because we're becoming more aware. So you might realize that on your healing journey, when you start to understand yourself more, when you start to love yourself more, actually you get more triggered. Why? Because old patterns resurface when we're becoming more aware. Even in my relationship, I feel like me and my partner trigger each other a lot because I feel like we're mirrors to each other. So just because you're healing doesn't mean that those old patterns won't resurface. They will, but you will just be more aware of them and you will know how to deal with them in a better way, in a more loving way, right? So in Bhagavad Gita 6.5, Krishna says, lift yourself by yourself. Do not degrade yourself. That verse is so important here. So instead of judging myself for feeling too sensitive, I chose to support myself through it with love, right? Old emotions don't mean that you're going backwards. They just mean that there's still something inside of you that wants gentleness, not criticism, that wants you to love them instead of hating them, that wants comfort and not, like criticism, like I said. Like, you just need to be there for your inner child in that moment. Like, visualize yourself hugging your inner child, and that's going to bring you peace. That's going to quench that part of you. So, healing doesn't mean that nothing ever hurts again. It just means that you meet the truth with more wisdom than before. So that's where the shift really happened for me. I realized I had a choice. I could either sit with the feeling and spiral, or I can do something intentional with it. So the Bhagavad Gita encourages this exact shift in Bhagavad Gita 2.47, where it says, you're entitled to action, not the outcomes. So I couldn't control how the moment unfolded, but I could choose what I did next. So instead of letting the emotion turn inward as self-judgment, I turned towards expression. So creativity is one of the most peaceful responses to discomfort. It doesn't deny the feeling, it transforms it. You channel your pain into something meaningful. And that could be in a lot of ways. Like for some people, it's writing. Like for me too, at times I sit down and write down my feelings and it makes everything so much better. And sometimes it turns into a beautiful poem, right? So that's me channeling my pain into creativity. Or for me, it's right now talking to you guys about this. I feel like I'm channeling my pain into something meaningful. For you, it might be dance, art, like writing, it could be anything. But for you, creativity might not look like a podcast. It might look like writing, walking, music, movement, journaling, or simply just sitting with yourself without any distraction. So peace doesn't mean doing nothing. It means you're doing something aligned. There's a misconception that choosing peace means avoiding reality, but peace isn't avoidance, it's discernment. In Bhagavad Gita 12.15, Krishna describes a wise person as one who is not disturbed by the world nor disturbs the world. That doesn't mean that nothing affects you. You're not like a sage. It just means that you don't let every emotion dictate your response. You can acknowledge that feeling. You can see those emotions and be like, yeah, I see you. Like I said, I see you anger. I see you frustration. I see you sadness. But that doesn't mean that you need to come up with a response based off of it? For me, peace meant not replaying conversations, not assigning blame, not shrinking myself, and not seeking immediate validation. Maybe not even addressing that external event, but instead trying to work it out internally, like I am right now. So peace meant choosing steadiness, even when something touched an old nerve. One of the most grounding verses, I think, in the Gita is Bhagavad Gita 9.22. Those who remain devoted, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. So, this verse kind of reminds me that belonging isn't always external. Sometimes life invites us inward, not because we're unwanted, but because we're being asked to reconnect with ourselves. Stillness can be protection, solitude can be healing, distance can be clarifying. So, choosing peace means trusting that what's meant to meet you will do so naturally, without force, without proving, without chasing. And that's one of my favorite verses ever, like my one of my favorite sayings ever. What's meant for you will never miss you, right? So you don't have to do anything to obtain the thing that you are meant for. So all these things that we chase so much at times, whether that be a particular job, whether that be a particular person, whether that be a particular place or thing, right? We chase all these things thinking that, oh my gosh, only if I try harder, maybe I'll obtain it. But in reality, like, what's meant for you can truly not miss you, even if it's a person. So if you truly think that a person is meant for you, no matter what you do, that person will not leave. Not saying that you should mistreat a person, but I'm saying that whatever you're destined for ultimately will reach you. So, I want to end with this reflection. There will always be moments where something small touches something old. That doesn't mean you're fragile. It means you're human. The Bhagavad Gita doesn't teach us to harden. It teaches us to stay steady without losing softness. Today, choosing peace looked like not taking things personally, honoring my feelings without dramatizing them, recognizing when the present touched the past, turning inward instead of outward, and choosing creativity over reaction. And this episode was truly my way of doing that. And if you're listening and something in your life feels tender right now, I hope you remember this. You don't need to explain your peace, you don't need to justify your stillness, and you don't need to react to every feeling. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to choose calm, create meaning, and let wisdom lead. Thank you guys for joining me today. And please, please, please express how you feel in the comments. I'd love to hear feedback. I'd love to hear what you'd like to hear more of. And thank you guys. I will see you in the next episode. I love you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead of you. Om Namah Shivaya.